Hello and welcome to this edition of Breaking Barriers with not only a brilliant leader, coach, and just all round amazing person, but also one of my best friends. So, best friends and business partner, Lisa Strutt. So, I'm going to embarrass you a bit now, Lisa, by telling everyone a little bit about you, and then we'll get stuck into hearing all about you. So, Lisa is a leadership coach who's come from a background in microphone has just changed there. So, come from a background in you worked in public sector, didn't you?
For
So
19 years.
yeah. But I know her as leadership coach extraordinaire when we were introduced to each other. So Lisa and I got involved in an organisation called Lean In. We were introduced to each other by a contact of both of ours, Nuala Murphy, and the statement was made, used to do the same kind of thing, you should meet and maybe you could do something together. And I remember we were put in a room together and it was a bit like, oh, and we met for coffee. And we often tell this story because one of Lisa's great areas of expertise is in building networks and I remember we met for coffee, our first meeting, just the two of us. And she asked me a question that nobody has ever asked me before on first meeting. And I was so thrown by it that I remember looking at her like, who are you? Have you just come down from space? And I could go back and hit myself for it. But she asked me, how can I help you? What can I do to help you achieve your goals? Like, what a good question to ask. And it was just so funny that that's what happened. I just went. But what I learned from that experience, and then as we built a relationship, which I'll tell you about in a minute, is Lisa is amazing at building friendships, building true and lasting and loyal relationships, because that's just who she is. She values relationships over everything. And you'll hear a bit more why in a moment. And from that very dodgy original meeting, we got together and we developed a program for Lean In Belfast over a year that over 800 women came through. We had a huge graduation ceremony in Belfast City Hall with the mayor in presence, and it really made a difference in lots and lots of women's lives. But in doing that, as we were both just starting out in our own businesses, it cemented our relationship, because working together at 2 o'clock in the morning, trying to get things done at the last minute, will do that for you. It will definitely it'll bring you together or break you apart forever. And thankfully, it brought us together. And we've been working together ever since, both doing our own businesses and also working together in Reboot, where we now work with women in sport. So we are our mission really is to get more women into leadership positions in sport, and to use what we learn in sport to help women in business as well. So, Lisa, I'll just give you some of the highlights of her bio. A TEDx and global speaker, a fellow of the Institute of Coaching. She's coached thousands of leaders in her time. She's bursted at the seams with qualifications, a bit like me. We're lifelong learners, so with certificates and degrees coming out the wazoo. In 2022, she won the Ulster Tatler Woman of the Year for overcoming adversity. And she's here today as my friend, my business partner, an expert in coaching and relationship building, and just so you can experience her magnificence. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Sinead, for the warm welcome. That is some intro.
I know
Appreciate
you
that.
hate an intro.
It was quite uncomfortable to sit there and listen to it, but actually lovely to hear our story afresh. It's always good to reflect on where we came from and what we've done together over the last quite a few years.
So with that, like I've given them a hint of our joint story, but obviously you've a whole story of your own. So what's your story, Lisa?
Oh, thanks for asking. I love to tell my story, and I think your story changes, and it really depends on who you're speaking to, what bits of your story you tell. Um, I remember once I wanted to be a storyteller, and I went on a course with a very flamboyant storyteller who did storytelling at Glastonbury and festivals and things. And I had this idea that I would be telling stories to children and in libraries and at festivals around the world. And I went to here to do this session, and what you had to do was tell your story, a story that you knew really well from the main character. So I chose Goldilocks and the Three Bears because my primary school teacher used to call me Goldilocks. So that story really stuck in my mind. And in this activity, you had to tell the story from the point of view of the protagonist, Goldilocks, and you told all the typical stuff you would expect about her. And then you had to tell the story from the point of view of another character in the story. And I chose the mummy bear. And of course, that was a completely different perspective on the same story because the mummy bear had an intruder in the house. And it was less about Goldilocks being tired, lonely, and lost in the woods, and more about who is in our house, eating our porridge, sitting in our chairs, and lying in our beds. And then the third perspective you had to tell the story from was an inanimate object in the story. And I chose the front door, and how the front door had all these different perspectives on who was coming and going and the daily working patterns of the day in that particular home. So this is all relevant to me telling you my story, um, because I think story is so powerful and is what connects us, and learning to tell your story is really important. So my story starts off very much in North Belfast, growing up in a very working class family and a North Belfast housing estate. Um, eldest daughter of Harry and Maura. A mixed marriage by Northern Ireland standards. So for all your American listeners, not mixed marriage in the American sense, but definitely in the Northern Ireland context, very significant. And we grew up. I grew up the eldest of four children, and values were really really important in our family home. And those are some of the things that really shaped my life story. First of all, that if you were intelligent or you were able academically, that what you would do you wouldn't keep just for yourself. And that was very much drummed into us that if you were given a gifting, um, then it wasn't just for you. You had to share it and you had to give back to your community. And so I grew up with a very strong sense of otherness. And growing up in that mixed marriage, I think made me a very tolerant person of difference because at school I felt like a bit of a chameleon. You know, I would be with all the people from my area in school, and then at the weekends I would be with my cousins, and they had a very different life experience. So I learned to adapt. I learned to make friends in different contexts, and I learned to feel like I belonged in different communities, and I think that stood with me all through my lifetime. At the age of 5, my mom very inconsiderately went into hospital to have a baby and came home with two, which I, is a big part of my story because for 5 years, Sinead, I was on my own and I was the center of the universe. And in that moment, um, the center of the universe shifted. And obviously, my parents' attention had to be spread between more than just me.
Can I point out? I'm guessing ultrasounds weren't a thing then, so it was a
No,
surprise to everybody.
it was a very big surprise to everybody, including my mum, when the consultant said, "There's another one in there."
Oh,
Um, so I can't imagine what that was like for my mom, and also for me, as if that wasn't bad enough. Only a matter of months later, she had another child. Well, not a matter of months, 14 months. Later, my youngest sister was born. So we went from a family of one to four children in quite a short time. And I think that was really pivotal for me in my story because after that, I think I would have done anything for a bit of attention. And so I joined loads of organizations. I did lots of things. And I know we'll probably come on to talk about that being an achiever. I was, as a child, I was like the donkey in Shrek, pick me. If there was anything to do, I signed up for it. If there was a prize to win, I went for it. If there was a sticker to be had, I wanted it from a book. And that was really formational for me in my early childhood. And I was very fortunate to have a lot of adult input. So one of my aunts taught me to read. One of my other aunts took me to work with her every Sunday, and I learned about service and how to meet customers' needs. And the better you were at that, the more tips you got. And I look back on those times in early childhood with great fondness, and a time of learning and growth, but also a time of thinking about being celebrated for what you were really good at.
mm, amazing. It's funny, I was just having a chat with a group of friends the other day, and we were talking about how we think everybody should have to do a job in service when they're younger because it teaches you so much. So it's lovely hearing you bring that up. It was to bring you closer to today. I know you've you've had some big challenges to overcome, and I mean we all have, but I've certainly lived through a few with you that I wouldn't wish on anyone. So, do you want to tell us a bit about those challenges you faced, whether at work, at home, and how you've overcome them and how that's shaped you?
Yeah, of course, I'm happy to share that part of my story. In fact, I do frequently, and it's part of that giving that I talked about that developed for me in early childhood. So um, I had an amazing career in local government in England. I had moved over there because of my late husband John's job, and we had the great fortune with his job to move around a lot. He had amazing job opportunities, so we got to live in 3 or 4 different countries: Italy, Portugal, Gibraltar, and we were traveling as a family. I have 3 children, and that was really phenomenal for me because I was able to work remotely at a time when remote working, long before COVID, wasn't even a thing. And then in 2015, we moved back as a family to the Emerald Isle, and and John, my late husband John, he was working for a company in Germany at the time, and he was commuting back and forward, and it was quite stressful for him. And it wasn't long after that he didn't feel well. We were at a concert, actually, the Killers concert. I'm just putting that out there because they're a fave band of mine. And he didn't feel well, and he was not long after that, 10 days after that, diagnosed with pancreatic cancer at the age of 44. And less than 3 years after that, sadly died of pancreatic cancer. Um, so yes, that has been a really big challenge for me as his wife, as a mom, as someone who's self-employed, as a coach, navigating my work and my roles and responsibilities as a mom and a wife during that time and subsequent to that. Um, so how have I managed that? Doing what I'm doing right now, talking about it, is one of the big things. And I learned a lot, Sinead, during that time about the importance of showing up to your feelings and emotions and not burying them. And um, also having a really good supportive network around me. And I know we're going to talk about networks and relationships, but I couldn't have maintained my business and being a strong person for John and my children had I not had a really supportive and caring network. People like you who covered sessions for me when I needed to go to the hospital, or when the chemo was really bad and I just couldn't give my best in a session. Other people who went on walks with me just to help me process what was going on and be that listening ear. And most of those people are people that I also know in business. So, a blurring of the boundaries of what a network is, maybe in terms of people's understanding, business is business and personal life is personal life. That's not how it's been for me. The people that I work with and know really well were the people who showed up for me during that time. Um,
Yeah, and you really generously share that story because I know it's not something a lot of people want to talk about, is death and living after death. And of course, you did an amazing TED talk about that. But you've also created a legacy of do you want to share that about how you've used your story to do something that has a powerful impact for others? And it's like, I'm proud of you for so many things, but this is just amazing. I think the work that you've done since John died.
Thank you, Sinead. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about it, because it's so close to my heart and it's become such a big part of my life. And I would never minimize at all what happened. What happened was really, really challenging, but I promised John that I would use my voice wherever possible to talk about death and dying and living and thriving and flourishing and all that good stuff, but and demystify some of the talk around death and dying and widowhood and was quite a young widow, and so just talking about that stuff and what it was like to care for someone who was dying. So I've had an amazing roller coaster of opportunities, working with two researchers from the University of Ulster, Charith Semple and Jeff Hanna. And together we have created e-learning resources for medical professionals so that they can be better equipped to have these tough conversations with parents and other dependent adults where there's children involved in a terminal diagnosis, and how to have those conversations. And that's led to me making a film with the Lyric Theatre in Belfast. It's led to us commissioning work with actors, and again working with the Lyric Theatre to create 7 short videos that are now available open source for health and social care professionals and others to access freely. And I've co-authored a chapter in a book that's going to be published this summer with the Open University on what it was like to be a carer and how I managed that. Again, talking about the people in my life that were important, talking about health and well-being, like taking care of myself physically, spiritually, mentally, and thinking about navigating those grief and loss scenarios with children. So lots has come out of it, and I like to think that John would be proud of me, for as you say, building a legacy, which to me is honouring his life.
Yeah. Gosh, there's no doubt about that that he would be proud of you. And I think it's been an amazing thing to watch when, you know, if I was to think about the threads that go through everything you do, giving is such a big part of what you do, connecting, supporting, and so, you know, this work does all of those things, and you're such a purpose driven person, and to find purpose in such a challenging time is it's
Mm.
just, I mean, it's all inspiring, and I don't know anybody that could think any different.
Thank you so
um,
much. I
and
appreciate it.
so I'm obviously proud of you for so many of those things, and we've talked about John being proud of you, but what are you proud of you for?
Well, that's a good question. There's lots of things in my life I'm proud of. One thing that stands out for me, really, especially going back a bit, is when I got my MBA, and less about the MBA, although it's great to have it, and I worked for 6 years to get it. Um, I did it through the Open University, and it was a mentor. And I know, it's really important you talk about mentorship and allyship and sponsorship and those sorts of things. I had an amazing mentor when I did executive leadership training at Portsmouth City Council a long time ago. And one of the gifts at the end of the program was you were allowed to ask the chief executive for something. And my one ask was, could I have a mentor? And I would like a woman mentor, and I'd like someone who would inspire me and challenge me. And he put me in touch with Bernie Topham, and she was an amazing mentor to me. And she really challenged me as I was anticipating going on a career break and going to live abroad to do a master's. And she said, Lisa, it'll be good for you. It'll help you, and it'll help you when you come back. And it was a really big thing for me, Sinead, to do that, because I was pregnant with my third child. I was about to move country from England to Gibraltar, and I signed up for my MBA the week that we moved house, and it took 4 days to get to Gibraltar from Portsmouth. And and I just remember thinking, um, I am going to do this. And I took 2 years off partway through it because the children were just too distracting, and I couldn't manage with the time. But one of my fondest memories of doing that is sitting with my youngest on one arm and typing on the other hand at 2 o'clock in the morning. And that was the first time I learned that learning doesn't have to be you giving a whole day or a whole, your whole life to the learning, that you can do it in a different way. And it blew my mind. And when I got the MBA after 6 years, I went to Ely Cathedral, and my guest of honor was my eldest child. She came with me, and in that moment, I just thought, I've been a role model to her. I've shown her what is possible. I've shown her that you can do something you set your mind to, and that it was just a beautiful moment. I'll never forget it. So that's one thing I'm really proud of, and actually it comes full circle, Sinead, because she is about to graduate this summer
Wow.
in July, and I'm just so proud of her, that I get to see her graduate after all she's been through. which is a different journey. So that's something I'm particularly proud of.
Oh, that's lovely. And yeah, the whole full circle thing. And I think we've fully embraced the flexibility of learning then ever since. It's
Definitely.
a gift that you've given me, and something we use definitely in our work. And so, thinking about our work and women, this is all about women breaking through. There's still not enough women in senior leadership positions. Like, you'd be easier getting there if you're called John or James. Um, one of which is your son's name, obviously. Uh, so, what is it you would love to see change about the landscape for women?
Oh, there's so many things, Sinead, and I know you asked me to think about one. Let's sit with the sports side of things. Um, more women in leadership in sport is definitely something we're on a mission um to change. The We know from the research there's so many excellent research papers out there right now from Deloitte, from Ernst and Young, um saying about the importance of having women in decision making roles in sport. Women's sport is growing at such a fast pace, and not just that. It's good. It's good for us as women to take care of our health and well being and stay in sport. And we know from the people that we work with in business that the people in business really value young people who have come through a sports environment, a sports arena, a competitive environment. They say they have more resilience, more staying power, they can deal with disappointment, they can work in a team, they can navigate change more easily, and they get performance. They understand it, and I think for us in the work that we're doing, bringing together the world of business and the world of sport and learning from those two high performance arenas. Um, I mean, it would seem remiss if we would exclude more than half the population in those conversations. So it's a no brainer for me. And that's definitely something I get really fired up about. I get excited about it. We work with lots of women in different sports, and we work with women in business. And when those two things come together, it's like, wow, there's real
Hmm.
there's real potential.
Yeah. And talking about things you're proud of, I know some of the work we've done together is some of the work I'm most proud of. And so our female football leaders program, our elite program, our hockey, we're going into tennis now. So what do you love about those programs, and what do you see happening?
Well, we've been involved in the Electric Ireland sponsored um, female football leaders program. I think this is our sixth year of involvement, and I know you had Sarah Bood on a month or so ago, and she had the original idea for the program. So it's really important to give her a shout out. And we've developed and grown uh, that program, the leadership element of it, over the past few years, and we have seen that just go stratospheric. And this year, for example, this cohort of women, there's 26, I think, in the group this year. They are phenomenal. They are hungry and eager to learn. They want to share their stories. They want to have an impact in the world of sport, particularly football. And they are so creative. What they've done already, creativity and resourcefulness comes to the fore. Um, and the other thing that just really blows my mind when working with this particular group, and all the groups actually, is the power of the peer support. What we see time and time again is when one woman steps forward and shares something or achieves something, no matter how big or how small, you've got 20 plus cheerleaders saying, well done. that's amazing. You've inspired me. And I think that creates a momentum that is so exciting and something that we've been so keen to harness, because that is where we're going to make impact quicker. We don't want to wait another 100 years. We want to have this impact sooner. And I'm just so encouraged by what I've seen in the leadership program in the football this year, and also what we're doing in tennis, which is working with a younger age group, 17 to 24s, and really looking at how we engage more young women to stay in sport and see sport as not just something they can have as a career, um, but something that they can be involved in, be role models in, and really thrive in.
Mm, absolutely. I mean, you see the resourcefulness and creativity, because the funds are so low with all of this, and yet they achieve so much. I mean, we've had clubs and teams and leagues and things popping up all over because of these women, and then getting to top levels in boards and committees, which is not an easy thing, where it's so traditionally been men, and the expectation is that it's men, and so I just love that work that we do, and then bringing that, the crossover into business and back again, harnessing that mindset. So, um, I would love you to share your story about the shoes, though, about the peer
Yeah.
support, because I just think it's such a lovely demonstration of how, when women come together and support each other, even the smallest thing can make a big shift.
Yeah, I I love thinking about how important that story was for me in my journey. And shoes is a recurring theme. If anyone knows me, they'll know that there's a shoe theme going on. Um, Really early on in my career, Sinead, when I worked in the private sector before I went to local government, I worked for a very entrepreneurial woman who really gave me an opportunity to come and work with her in training and development. And she was one of those people who really believed in you. And I think it's so important that we recognize those people in our lives. And she believed in me when I didn't really believe in myself, because I had a German and history degree, and I didn't really know what I was going to do. And she gave me, she saw something in me, in terms of training, in terms of development, that I maybe didn't see in myself. And one of the tasks that she gave me was to run a women's development program. And this is in the 90s. And I honestly felt terrified, because I thought I could be doing with a women's development program, never mind being the trainer on the women's development program. But she believed in me enough to give me the responsibility for this work. And so we marketed the program, and we got a bunch of women come on the program. And I'll never forget it, because these women came along, and they had fairly ordinary goals, things that they wanted to achieve. And one woman wanted to build her confidence. She wanted to be able to walk in this shop and return an item and get her money back, and she just couldn't bring herself to do it. And I watched as a group of women, as we walked through this kind of role play scenario of one of them pretending to be the shopkeeper, one of them, being another shopper, and she playing herself, bringing the shoes back to the shop and talking it through, and everybody encouraging her and going, yes, you can do it. And this is long before social media, and before you would check on WhatsApp to see if someone had, achieved something. Um, and so we had to wait to the next Thursday night to find out what had happened. And so the group departed and wished her all the best. And the next Thursday night, we all got together, and we're all waiting to find out, had she taken the shoes back to the shop. And we didn't even need to ask her. She walked in to the room, Sinead. Her head was high, her shoulders were back, and she was just beaming from ear to ear. And that taught me a lesson, that sometimes it's the smallest things, the smallest changes we can make, and the power of having people around you support you and cheer you on and go, you can do it. That really makes the biggest difference. Because years later, I met her in a store, and she was now a supervisor of a shop, and she hadn't worked for over 20 years. And that is just a beautiful story. Um, and there's so much learning in that for us as women, supporting women, for us in leadership as well. Don't underestimate the power of the small encouragement. um and be that person, be that person who helps someone else achieve their goals.
Oh, I love that. And that really, leads into your whole mindset and approach around your network. Because I know so many people get a bit ugh about network, and especially women, because I think we've always watched men do the networking. Northern Ireland is still quite traditional, and it's still seen as a bit of a political game for women, and something I'm not comfortable with, and or don't feel confident about, or whatever it may be. So share with us some of your golden nuggets of networks, and how we can get over ourselves and make the most of the people we know.
Well, like, we are natural born networkers, because as human beings we are wired for connection. So that's the first thing. It's already in you. It's in your DNA to connect. And we're already part of networks. Our family is a network. Your class at school is a network. Network is just where any human interaction happens. And I think if we demystify the networking, and we move beyond that as something that's icky and Machiavellian. I'm going in here with my agenda to get something for me, something out of you. It's a win lose, and mostly you're on the losing end. Then I can see why people don't want to engage in that. But if we look at it um as building relationships, as nurturing relationships, as connecting, as being there for people, and giving of yourself, your insight, your wisdom, your guidance when asked, then it's much more manageable, and it's much more attractive a prospect to basically get to know someone, to see someone for who they are, and where they're at in life. You asked me right off the top of this session, what's your story? And that's, for me, one of the biggest things in building relationship, finding out what someone's story is. It's meeting them where they're at and taking it from there.
Absolutely, I love that. And I think one thing that you always really encourage, so Lisa would do sessions for me in my leadership mastermind program. We do a lot of work together. One thing that I think you're so strong at encouraging is the giving mentality, and also making the ask. Like, how often we don't make the ask.
Yeah. And I think well, it's interesting. There's some cultural nuance here. So I was recently in America, and there's an expectation that you'll have an ask. And when I deal with my friends in the US, for example, they always end the conversation with, and is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything I could help you with? And it's so natural, and they mean it. So I think we have to get a bit more comfortable with asking for help. And it's, I'm speaking to myself here. For a long time I thought I had to do it all and know all the answers, and the to say that it didn't was weakness. but you can't build a business. You can't get referrals. You can't achieve those bold, audacious goals if you don't engage with other people, because no one can do it solo. So this is really about an investment. It's about nurturing your relationships. It's about being really clear what it is you can offer, what you're working on, and it's not being afraid to say, is that something you could help me with, or I'm really curious about how I might get to know about that, or someone that could help me with something that I'm working on, and not being afraid to make that ask, not being afraid to share that bit of your story.
Brilliant. Well, we're nearly out of time,
Wow,
so
that went quick.
I know. So, what's a last gift you could maybe give anyone that's watching?
Whoa, a last gift. Well, I'm doing some research on transition and people in transition. I feel, Sinead, like I've been in transition my whole life. If it's not moving country, it's moving role, setting up a business, and dealing with grief and loss. And I, I don't know if you've heard of the book by Oliver Berkman, The 4,000 Weeks. And so I was doing some research on life expectancy, and the average woman from Northern Ireland will live to the age of 82 or so. And I just did a little calculation this morning before I come onto the call, and I'm at about 62% of the way through my life if I live to the average age of a woman in Northern Ireland, and that really got me thinking. And so I guess it's that I want to say to your listeners. You get this one precious life, and I love adventure. I love the wildness of life. I love being out in nature. If I've lived almost 2/3 of my life, and of course I don't know, what do I want to do with what's left? What impact do I want to have? And how can I set my intention towards that? So whatever your listeners are doing, whether it's in senior leadership roles, it's in their community, it's in their family, to really think about where you are on that timeline, and to think about some of the things you might want to let go of, some of the things you want to do more of, and some of the things you just might want to cut right out of your life, so that you can live life more intentionally, more fully, and with more joy and thriving.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. That's phenomenal. And it's so interesting because I don't think a lot of people spend their lives with intention, and it's something I've been challenging.
Mm.
I always challenge clients with. And that idea of actually asking, what is it that I want? How do I want to spend my time? And focusing your energy on that. I just had a client that's just been like, this has blown my mind. I've never asked myself that question before. And so it makes me think of the necklace you wear.
Yes. So
What?
I have a necklace that didn't actually get time to put it on today, but it was given to me as a gift from one of the groups that I worked with, and it says on it, "What is mine to do with the life that I have been given?" And it's something that I think about and meditate on every day. What is mine to do today with this life that I've been given? And it is precious. Um, I believe that I have so many gifts and talents and things to offer the world, and it's my intention to leave my little corner of the world better than I find it. And I think that if you live your life with an intention like that, you can get through the really tough days. And there are tough days, and they do come. Um, but it's seeing the bigger picture. It's seeing beyond that. It's what Simon Sinek calls playing in the infinite game.
Beautiful. Thank you so much,
Thanks for
Lisa.
having me.
I'm sure that has inspired many people. I really appreciate you taking your time, and thank you.